Namaskar. Classical Indian Dance in Literature and Arts. The third edition of this work by Dr. Kapila Vatsyayan was launched in an August ceremony a day before yesterday. The ceremony was held at IIC, India International Center, New Delhi. This new and revised edition has a prologue by me. This book by Dr. Kapila Vatsyayan is supposed to be her magnum opus. It is definitely a milestone in the area of studies on Natya Shastra, Indian aesthetics, Indian classical dance, and Sanskrit drama. Dr. Vatsayana here joins the ranks and files of ancient Indian Bhashyakaras. She walks into the footsteps of Abhinav Gupta in such an assiduous way that we may call her a modern Abhinav Gupta. In this book, as well as in several other works of her, Kapilaji by and large adopts the tenfold path of exegesis or Vyakhya Paddhati. That was spelled out by Abhinav Gupta himself, and that has been followed by him in some of his commentaries, particularly in his commentary on Natya Shastra, Abhinav Bharati. I will cite the stanzas from Abhinav Gupta where he explains his methodology for exegesis or Vyakhya Paddhati. These stanzas occur in the beginning of his Abhinav Bharati, in the very first chapter of Natya Shastra. Upadeyasya sampatha tadanyasya pratikanam sputa vyakhya virodhanam parihara supurnata lakshanusaranam shlishta vaktavyansha nivedanam sangati paunuruktyānam samadhanamanakulam sangrahaschetyayam vyakhya prakarotra samashritah. This is the Vyakhya Prakar that I have taken recourse to in my commentary, Abhinav Gupta says. And he enumerates 10 prakaras of this Vyakhya Paddhati. Upadeyasya sampatha. This is the first one, reiterating that which is worth considering. That is, going through the enormous mass of textual corpus and then selecting that which is worth considering. Tadanyasya pratikanam. Demarcation of that which is not worth considering. Sputa vyakhya. Then clear explanation. Virodhanam parihara. Resolving the contradictions. Supurnata. Holistic approach. Lakshyanusaranam. Pursuing the lakshya. Lakshya is the original text. So the original text is not lost sight of. It is always adhered to. Strishta vaktavyansha vivechanam. Dealing with the statements which are mixed up and which are joined together, you can say. Sangati paunuruktyanam. Pointing out the consistency in repetitions. In the original text, several portions are repeated purposefully, so that you have to show the relevance of these repetitions. Samadhanam anakulam. Providing solutions at ease. And finally, the 10th one, sangraha, that is summing up or resume, or the enumeration of the categories that have been explained. Then Abhinav Gupta enumerating this tenfold path of his exegesis, also says that I have tirelessly scaled the heights above and above. Following the series of ladders of thought that were earlier conceived by men of yore. Urdhvardham aruhye yadartha tattvam dhihi pashyati shantim avedayanti phalam tadadyaihi parikalpitanam viveka sopana paramparanam. This is the way I have followed, having tirelessly scaling the heights above and above. The human intellect visualizes reality, but this just happens to be the fruit of series of ladders of thought that were conceived by the men of yore. Kapilaji also has walked into the footsteps of her gurus. She learnt Shastras from very eminent traditional Pandits. She was with Pandit Vasudev Sharan Agarwal for years. She used to be in the company of several other eminent gurus, as well as modern philosophers also, like Radha Krishnan and Aldous Huxley and so many others. She is widely traveled and erudite, and vast store of learning she had. Besides Abhinav Gupta, Kapilaji also acknowledges her indebtedness to Anand Kumara Swami, whom she regards as her mentor. However, she transcends the limitations of Anand Kumara Swami, as I find. Anand Kumara Swami hardly had an access to the vast corpus of Sanskrit text on Alankara Shastra. He perhaps had a copy of Sahitya Darpana by Vishwanatha. Other texts like Abhinav Bharati or Dhvanyalok Lochana or even Dhvanyaloka, perhaps he did not go through. They were not available during the days he was working. So he has his own language of exegesis. He translates rasa as an ideal beauty, which to me is not an accurate translation. Kapilaji goes deeper into the concepts. This third edition of this work, brought out in a much more improvised and decent way by D.K. Printworld, with a prologue by me, and as a tribute to Kapilaji, because I am also indebted to Dr. Kapila Vatsyayan in several ways. I have been learning from her a lot. I know her for the past 50 years, and listening to her lectures, being in her company also, and more than that, going through the enormous mass of her works, I also learned several things from Kapila Vatsyayan. And as a token of my gratitude, I am reading out some portions from the prologue of this book by me. The prologue by me, which accompanies this book. Dr. Kapila Vatsyayan can be ranked as one of the foremost art historians and philosophers of modern India. An aesthetician par excellence, she created hermeneutics for a serious study of Indian knowledge systems on art and aesthetics. For a serious study of India's knowledge systems on art and aesthetics. She is definitely one of the very few scholars, the rare species of modern Vyasas or Bhartas or Abhinav Guptas, who tried to understand the theory and practice of arts not only on the basis of original Sanskrit texts, the scriptures or Shastras, but also being skilled practitioners, they gave entirely a new perspective to their study. Classical Indian Dance in Literature and Arts by Kapilaji was the first work on a critical and analytical study of the whole tradition of Indian dance with reference to Sanskrit texts, particularly Natya Shastra and Abhinav Bharati or Natya Shastra. It is the result of her intensive studies and painstaking hard work taken up as love for labor. Dr. Vatsyayan has delved deep into the enormous mass of literature on the subject, and she has also surveyed the portrayal of dance figures in ancient temples. This was a pioneer study of its own kind, going through the figures of 108 Karnas in Nataraja and other temples and identifying them on the basis of Natya Shastra. With her practical knowledge of various dance forms as a performing artist of her own standing, and having studied the sculptures and artifacts minutely, Kapilaji emerges here as a rare combination of a researcher, an art historian, and an aesthetician. Keeping the whole peninsula in her mind, she has studied various dance forms prevalent in all the nooks and corners of the country. The other work by her, Vanjadeva's Geet Govindam, and its practice in various regional dance forms in India, that also is a remarkable work by Kapilaji. But then she also points out the basic unities and the inherent philosophy behind these various forms. The first chapter of this work elaborates some of the core concepts of Indian aesthetics. To Kapilaji, the realm of aesthetics lies in Atman, the human soul. She is an idealist philosopher that way, like Ananda Kumaraswamy. She has created a subtle methodology and interpretative tools for understanding of our knowledge traditions by the way of implying a whole set of symbols, metaphors, and myths. And she interprets the multiplicity and dynamism of traditions of these systems. The metaphor of seed and sprout is taken to explain art activity. At the level of creativity, the seed lies in eschewing the individual self, sacrificing the ego. Yatha bijat bhaved vraksha, vrakshat pushpam phalam tatha, tatha moolam rasah sarve, tebhyo bhavaha vyavastitah. Bharat Muni says in Rasadhyaya. So this metaphor of seed and tree is there. Even in Mahabharata as a tree, or Yudhishthira as a tree, Yudhishthiro Dharmamayo Mahadruma. So this metaphor of tree occurs to explain the structure of a text, of a knowledge text in our tradition. But the way she expands the whole concept of seed and tree in a modern setting as well. This is something remarkable what Kapilaji does. So the seed lies in the eschewing of individual self, sacrificing the ego. This requires a rigorous training and a life of discipline. Kapilaji rightly views this process as a yajna. The metaphor of seed and tree also points out to the inner and outer levels of art creativity. She also adopts the metaphor of the ocean, a confluence of many streams of thought. Multiple streams of Indian theatre. This is another work by her to explain the organizational structures in art. This metaphor is suggestive of the diversity and unity of knowledge traditions. As a thinker, Kapilaji adheres to Advaitavada, monist ideology. The aesthetic theory as propounded by her creates the dialectics of unified, undifferentiated experience. It visualizes one and the same consciousness in all the phenomena. In art creativity, this consciousness manifests in multifarious forms moving from centrifugal to centripetal. In this way, there is fluidity and resilience in the process. The undifferentiation culminates into differentiation, the unmanifest into manifest, and abstraction into concretization. The foundations of such an aesthetic theory are better supported by Shaivite monism rather than Vedanta, rather than the Vedantic Advaita. Kapilaji rightly points out the subtle difference between the two. She has gone through the original Sanskrit text of philosophy also, and she has tried to understand them with gurus. And she has studied so many modern philosophers and works on science as well. That way she was a unique person amongst us. The absolute in Vedanta is not self-conscious. The absolute in Shaivism is both self-conscious and self-luminous. Swayam Prakashya and Swachetana. It is vibrating with a potential to create a universe. Kapilaji presents an idealistic view of the whole tradition of Indian art and aesthetics. The practice of art or learning any discipline, as a matter of fact, is a spiritual pursuit, a sadhana. It is for self-realization and invariably leads to harmony within. This is what Abhinav Gupta also says, and how art, literature and poetry, they lead to emancipation, to the breaking of the shackles of an individual, to the breaking of the bondage, or to moksha. And the process for attainment of moksha through the art creativity, for a nata, the performer, for a poet, and for the Konoishar Saradaya, that also has been explained by Abhinav Gupta. Kapilaji, in a language better suited for a modern audience or readership, explains this process. So with this approach, Kapilaji looks towards the roots and strikes upon the fundamentals of art forms. Each of the 7 swaras, musical notes, correspond to the 7 basic elements of physical body. They issue from the 7 centers or chakras. These are her interpretations. This book has chapter on Sanskrit drama, the performance of Sanskrit drama, chapter on music, Indian system of music, and Kapilaji has a very subtle understanding of the musical system that is envisaged in the Natya Shastra, the system that comes from Samaveda, the system based on jatis and shrutis. And she also brings out the philosophy that underlies behind this system. So, all the systems in this music, swara, shruti, jati, raga, etc., are linked to the internal landscape. They stir the inner course of human psyche. With a rare insight, Kapilaji unearths the linkage between ahat nada, perceptible sound, and anahat nada, absolute sound. Both are manifestations of the cosmic sound, which in the philosophy of music is described as the cause of this universe, Nada Brahman. And several musical texts deal how the creation proceeds from Nada Brahman. As Bhartihari explains how the creation proceeds from the Shabda Brahman. Unlike Western ballet, terrific movements, leaps and gliding movements are avoided. So, with this approach, she also analyzes the theory and practice of Indian dance. She also discusses Bharata's dramatic concepts and rightly points out the theory and practice of Indian dance. She rightly points out that, again I am quoting her, the theory and practice of Indian dance is an integral part of the conception of drama and cannot be understood without the full realization of the implications of these assertions, which have so aptly been made by Bharata. At a very early stage of development, both these arts fused into one, so that by the time of Bharata wrote his treatise, dance was very much a part of drama, and at many points of contact, both the arts were conspicuously conceived as one. This is her understanding, and Natyashastra to her is neither a treatise on drama alone, as understood by some, nor a treatise on dancing, as believed by quite a few. The technique of Indian dancing has been actually to be cooled and its principles selected with the acute discrimination from the technique of dramaturgy prescribed by Bharata. But then, Kapilaji does consider the autonomy of dance and its emergence as an independent art. On the other hand, she also emphasizes over the independence of drama as presented in performance on the Angika of dance without which the character of Indian drama is lost. So, with this focus on interdependence between various arts, Kapilaji deals with their creative process, which begins from the deep-rooted layers of human psyche. And she, of course, depends on Abhinav Gupta, and she also discusses the four stages of Vak, the externalization of the inner layers of psyche in the form of four stages of Vak. And Abhinav Gupta also explains the creative process of art or theatrical performance or poetry on the basis of these manifestations of Vak, the fourfold manifestation of Vak. And Kapilaji also explains these stages. So the dimensions of the spirit, which is so often experienced by sensitive and aesthetically trained, and which has been called the twin brother of mystic experience, is one which the ancient artist and the theoretician knew well. The text only lay down the rules through which the perfect form in art can be suggested, and in turn through which a state of supreme bliss, however momentary, can be experienced. The problem of arupa, assuming the form, the rupa, she also discusses in the context of sculpture. To her, in sculpture, an image is not exactly divinity. It is merely an aspect of the hypostasis, avastha of God, who is, in the last analysis, without likeness, amurta, not determined by the form, arupa, and transform, pararupa. Music and dance in this way lead to the highest spiritual attainment. In dance, the body of the performer becomes the vehicle for the attainment of soul. Every gesture, every movement, and every attitude, which is asana, bhanga, or mudra, paves the way for a spiritual journey within. These are her words. In this way, this leads to the idea of fundamental unity in all arts. The differences in technicalities and methodologies are just diverse ways leading to the one and the same goal. The artist begins from arupa, the abstract, the unfathomable unknown, and visualizes the rupa, which is perceptible, fathomable, and concrete. Satvik Abhinaya provides the best example for the transformation of arupa, the idea and abstract becoming rupa. All the bhavas can be represented through physical gestures, but Abhinaya should reflect the inner soul. Even the ragas of music, as Kapilaji rightly points out, can be represented through Sanyukta Hastas, joint hands, which are explained by Bharat Muni in his Natya Shastra, or Asanyuta Hastas, the single hands, with outward and upward movements. This very subtle relation between Arupa and Rupa, between Raga and Abhinaya, between the musical systems and the Abhinaya mudras, not only brings arts like music, poetry and theatre into close relationship, it opens possibilities beyond imagination. It may be possible that a raga being presented through its abhinaya without any vocal recital, and the adept audience have an experience of that raga. They can hear the echoes of that raga within. These are the possibilities because of this interdependence between various systems. So, in several other chapters, Kapilaji presents the idealistic view of the whole tradition of Indian art and aesthetics, and she discusses Bharata's dramatic concepts, and she points out to the integral part of the conception of Indian drama or Sanskrit drama. And she said that it cannot be understood without the full realization of the implications of these assertions which have so aptly been made by Bharata at a very early stage of development. Both these arts fused into one, as she said. So, the integral vision of all arts lead to a holistic perspective. And in this way, she examines the interrelationships between dance and literature, and the third chapter deals with these interrelationships. She explains the way how to perform the dramas of Kalidasa, or before that Bhasa, and after that Shudraka, Bhagavati, etc., on the basis of various systems of Abhinaya, which are explained in Bharata's Natya Shastra. In fact, this also is the first study of the relationship between Sanskrit drama and the Natya Shastra, which has been done by Kapilaji. The interrelationships between dance and literature in our traditions have never been one-sided. Dancers, of course, have been drawing profusely from literary sources. They derive from Kalidasa's plays, from several themes in Sanskrit literature, or from Jayadeva's Geet Govinda. But Kapilaji points out that the classics like Geet Govindam of Jayadeva have remained everlasting sources for all the types of traditional Indian dances. But at the same time, dance and its motifs have inspired our poets, and they have weaved some of the most imaginative sequences in their writings on the basis of their knowledge of Indian dance in theory and practice. She says, Kapilaji says, dance has not only provided these writers with a subject for pleasure, for beauty, and for poetic ornamentations in a nebulous way, but it has also influenced them in a way that they are sensitive to the minutest technical details and exhibit a knowledge of the art incapable to any reference to it found in other literatures of world. Kapilaji also points out how dance cast an impact in the making of many spiritual thinkers and saints. They could concretize the abstract theories and reformulate the symbols with the tools of dance in hand. These are very subtle ideas which come from this book, and Kapilaji in fact has revolutionized our understanding of Vedic rituals from this point of view, how the Vedic rituals percolate the performance. This is her very brilliant analysis of the Vinyoga, application of hymns from Vatsyayan Samhita of Yajurveda and how they are integrated into the theatrical practice as propounded in Natya Shastra and how they are visualized in dance sequences also. So this is something unique which she has contributed in this book. With her wide range of knowledge about diverse traditions, she also goes to find out the reflections of tribal music and dances in Vedic traditions. And she also unearths the interrelationships between sculpture and dancing, which is also her major contribution in this area. She says that the tributaries to the main river of the experience of life and art in India are unfolded by her with the panorama of Indian iconography and sculpture. The strong current of the earliest centuries of Christian era passes through the torrents and uproars. The exuberance and abundance in the Kushana and Amravati periods, it settles down to the flow of mighty river in the Gupta period with immeasurable depth below and an undisturbed quiet flow on the surface. This is her idea of the development of the whole dance traditions and the whole tradition of Indian sculpture. She rightly points out that these sculptures present the philosophy and vision of seers and great poets. The figures become embodiments of the cosmic idea and architecture a reflection of the cosmic design. The symbolism behind Indian sculptures is aptly unraveled here. The dancing figures created with a rapturous intensity recreate the cosmic movement. The rhythm underlying them echoes the eternal course. The whole Karna system, as given in the 4th chapter of the Natya Shastra, has been studied from the point of view of their depiction in the Chidambaram temple. And these researches by Kapilaji have unearthed some unknown facets of our culture and have also led to restoring of missing links. For example, in her study of dance and music traditions, she informs about the custom of singing the praise of a deceased person. Along with the eunuchs, ladies and various other classes of society, a Pani Vadaka used to come to narrate the deeds of a departed soul as a part of the funeral rites. She connects this Pani Vadaka to Panigna as mentioned in Vatsyayan Samhita. Ayodhya Kand of Valmiki's Ramayana gives a graphic picture of the songs and narratives about Dasharatha following his said demise. It was because of her first-hand knowledge of practical aspects of the Natya Shastra that she could clear a number of misunderstandings which the other researchers in the field had committed in their studies of the Karnas particularly, which are described in the 4th chapter of Natya Shastra. T.N. Ramchandran, B.V.N. Naidu and others who had made attempts at identifying Karnas in Bradishwara and other temples on the basis of their reading of the 4th chapter of Natya Shastra regarded Karnas as static postures. Karna, being the basic unit of dance, is the combination of several specific movements as well as gestures by hands and other limbs. The sculptures in ancient temples present only the final position the performer would attain after completing the whole sequence of these movements. Kapilaji could detect this lacuna in our studies, in our understanding of Karna. The division of human body into Angas and Upangas is well known to the practitioners of classical dance and theatre. However, it is Kapilaji who tells us the distinctive nature of our understanding of human psychology, our understanding of human physiology as different from the Western standards. In our tradition, the basic anatomical structure of, quoting her, the basic anatomical structure of human form is more important than accessories of muscles and tendons that cover it, unquote. In this tradition, it becomes possible, therefore, to, again these are our words, analyze human body in terms of a set of geometrical and mathematical laws of places and surfaces, unquote. This was just a glimpse of the work, this enormous work of its own kind by Kapilaji. Thank you.